I'm live! Sorry, I'm doing my little weekly angel card reading for myself. All right. I like all this. It's good. How's everybody doing? Welcome to 13 Universal Laws with Jesse Blaze Snider. I am your host, Jesse Blaze Snider. Produced by the wonderful Michael Zinn behind the computer over there. We are on week 11. Woohoo! Me and Michael and I, we have been trying to figure out how to do things based on these concepts that we're understanding and we see are so universal to every aspect of all of our lives. And this class became the first excuse to do it. So thank you to Christine at Tranquility Within, who was like, basically just kicked me in the butt a couple times until I gave her an idea for a class that I could do. And this was it. So very cool that we're 11 classes in. We're almost done with our whole overview of the universal laws, very in-depth. And with every class, we've been starting by just going over the basic concepts of the 13 universal laws. I'm going to go through it not super long today because we've talked about this a bunch of times, but basic concepts. The first three. Universal law number one, law of one. Everything is one. Everything is divine, perfect oneness. We're going to kind of get to another way of looking at this oneness that we're living in. But it comes from oblivion, comes from sort of the nothing that sort of must have perpetuated something, the mind, the thoughts, the sort of eternal rest, the slumbering oneness within all of us that exists and is very, very clear to see in so many ways. Two, we've got the law of mentalism, or the law of mind, which demonstrates that everything is just a mind. Anything that we can conceive of, just having a conversation anyway, we can't do this without a mind. All right? We are all one, and that's fundamental, but more fundamental for our processing of things is that we're a mind. We're a split mind. We're this one thing split into many, 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 many different independent things. Now, when the nothing first became something, enlivened, went from sleeping to awake, polarity was created, the very first polarity, the polarity of the nothing that we came from and the something that we turned into. But we'll always be part of that nothing. There will always be a part of us ready to get back to that rest. So we come from one thing, we're made of mind that is fragmented, and this active thing and inactive thing creates a fundamental Achilles heel for everything in creation. Polarity. We are naturally polarized beings. We are fundamentally out of balance with the oneness because we're taking a choice. We're making a choice in one direction or another direction as opposed to choosing it all at once, which is essentially what the oneness is doing. The oneness is choosing everything at once, and it's just one ringing out. And now this other thing, it's like, oh, how about this? Essentially, every choice it makes is just another way of being out of balance with itself, becoming polarized in various ways. These different polarities you would call vibrations. There's tons and tons and tons of vibrations. The law of vibration states that everything vibrates, everything has its own unique vibrational signature. Your vibration dictates relative vibrations to it. And as we'll see today as we get deeper into correspondence, just how sort of, I don't know, like Play-Doh mixing together it really is. It's just all one thing operating. And as you can really start to let it all sink in, this movement, this flow of how this stuff works, you're probably going to really understand what I'm saying. So there's an infinite number of vibrations and then relativities to that vibration. So Case in point, if I got the arrow this way, I could also put the arrow this way. The vibration and the relativities are significant because when you put these two things together, it brings forth balance. This brings us to the law of gender. Gender says that the fundamental energies of the one mind have been divided in a way where they need to counterbalance each other. And that balance comes from getting the masculine and the female vibration in harmony. So masculine and female vibration exists in everything, in everyone. The reason why we have so much sort of gender confusion, I think, on the planet is because we're very rigid about what we think of as sort of masculine. Men are supposed to be masculine and female, women are supposed to be feminine, right? So then if you're a man and you feel very feminine, which I always have, and I kind of, I wouldn't have defined it that way probably when I was younger, but you mask that because, you seem to understand that the way the world works is like the men are supposed to be masculine and the women are supposed to be feminine. But this isn't true. Every man and every woman has a masculine and feminine nature at the same time. And balancing both those natures within oneself is really the game. Getting a complementary relationship with a complementary energy for yourself is a great thing. But if you're not balanced in your own gender, balanced in your own masculine and feminine energies, it's not going to help anything. So that's essentially what the law of gender dictates. All right, moving on to 7, 8, 9. We've got the perpetual transmutation of energy. The oblivion represents sort of possibility because from this nothing came everything, came the mind that created everything. So the perpetual transmutation of energy and inspired action, the action of the mind. And what we're really getting to when I'm teaching this whole thing here is that the actions of the mind are this. This is it. This is the action of the mind. Anything that seems like additional to this it's just a trick. It's just a trick of the words that we're putting on top of a thing that's disguising it from being. Polarity, relativities, balancing two energies, a lot of possibility, a lot of action, a lot of one thing affecting another thing, which is cause and effect. That brings us to the next thing. And moving on, these are just all sort of necessary. This happens. When you break down this sort of 1, 2, 3 of the one into the mind becoming polarity, you could just look at that as the white into the black and the gray being this polarity, the gray being the potential for all of like the gradation, the possibilities within these parameters. These are the parameters that are set. And now that sets a middle point. And now from here, these additional things create the gradient of other possibilities, the next little number group. And that's your colors when you look down at this little Kabbalah tree of life here. These colors are the colors that are in between the black and the white. That's what we're looking at in between there. And now there might be some more colors below that or above that we can't perceive with our eyes that are existing in a different frequency. But at least for us, we've got this parameter of white and black, red at the bottom, and violet on top or indigo on top, or however you want to look at it. So, moving along, we've got all this possibility for energy, to be used. We've got all of this action being created by the mind perpetually in this sort of patterning. And this creates this cause and effect situation. And the cause and effect thing I've talked about before. I've got a little picture over there where we've got 3 cartoon images where there's somebody starts and he's holding a balloon and he's happy. And then in the second picture, he gets struck by lightning. And then in the third picture, he's dead. And this is a cause and effect. The thing with cause and effect is you have to have something to set it up. Like it's always based on a previous thing. The cause and effect is always creating the changed state that is now allowing for the new cause to come in, the new thing to come in. So it's this perpetual cycle forward. It's not cause and effect and then separately cause and effect, separately cause and effect. No, it's just a chain of things, a chain of cause and effect. And really, even in your own life, my apologies. In your own life, we spoke about this last week about how powerful rhythm is. If you pull back one of those giant steel balls, hanging from the things, and there's a whole bunch of steel balls in a row, and you pull it back, and based on how much energy is in this pull back, right, will be a complete dictation of what happens as this ball hits this thing. Granted, there's a couple other things going on here where, let's say I had the ball a little bit off to the right and I accidentally hit the ball like at the wrong angle, but let's just say I'm hitting the ball just perfectly there, and it's all based on how high I'm holding it. If I hold it over here, it's only, right? Everything is dictating just very clearly when you see that happen. You can't see that happen so clearly in your own life, but it is. It is happening like that. There are factors at play that you're not able to perceive because there's a lot of energetic factors at play. And as you can see, we are energetic beings moving around in the world, vibrating in the world, and the world is vibrating back at us, and we're being affected by things. So it's hard sometimes to see that there's this very simple pull the ball up, drop the ball, king, 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 cause and effect going on, but that's exactly what's happening. Moving on over here, last week we talked about rhythm, how powerful rhythm is. Rhythm, because of the nature of rhythm, it's not a wishy-washy thing. It's about parameters, it's about infinite possibilities, infinite reverse possibilities, possible balances, the interest in sort of exploring all these possibilities over and over again in this way. This is the rhythm. On that show, The Mandalorian, they say, this is the way. This is the way. This is the way the rhythm flows. The rhythm is always flowing like this, and it's strong. It's not a wishy-washy thing. You can't stop polarity. You can't stop the fact that there are all sorts of different vibrations, all sorts of different choices to be made, and all sorts of possibilities for yourself. You do something, or something happens to you, and all of a sudden you start to think, oh, what if I do that? And what if I do that? And what if that's it? That's the possibilities. They're there. You see them. They're in your mind. Oh my goodness, there's all sorts of possibilities. The possibilities are everything. The possibilities that you think are possible, the things that you don't think are possible. Very, very, very important what you think, because everything is a mind, and it's polarized, and it's fundamentally gendered and out of balance. And it's perpetually going on this journey, creating all these rhythms. And we're going to talk about today correspondence, which is sort of the giant rhythm. If we look at vibration number 4 as a smaller rhythm, vibration is just, this is the vibration. That's the rhythm that's vibrating at. Whatever the hell it is, right? That's the rhythm. But the rhythm is a longer chain. It's not, it's the whole line of the song. It's, there you go. That's the rhythm. So this thing is the thing coming down the pop. And then the correspondence is the rhythm going up or going down to the next octave. So it's multiple rhythms, and also multiple rhythms in terms of relativity. If this is going, there's a counter melody that I could put in where I was like, and those two things could cross over, and you'd see how they're corresponding in various ways with one another. So correspondence is just an even more complicated way of saying vibrational relativity, rhythmic relativity. Larger rhythms are playing out, and then there's all sorts of relativities to those rhythms, which is the correspondence that I'm going to talk about today. And because of the nature of correspondence being so sort of vast in that way, I may lose you a little bit here or there, because it's going to sound like I'm kind of talking about all of it. But that's why it's so low on the list, is because contained within rhythm is all this, and contained within correspondence is all this and the rhythm. It's just this bigger picture, which is the whole reason why I wanted to teach this class in the first place. Because people talk about the law of attraction, which is number 13, and I'm skipping ahead right now, but the law of attraction, it's just a tiny little piece. Like to think of yeah, you want to line up with the things you want to attract and stuff. It's a little bit more complex than that, buddy. Yeah, I want to line up with the thing, but if I don't know that I'm naturally polarized and prone to polarization, and naturally out of balance, and have certain energies that need to be balanced with me. There's a lot of things to understand within making sure that you're ready to line up for the universe you want to live in, line up with the energy of the world that you want to have. And it all comes from learning this whole thing. Finally, here you got infinite compensation, which essentially just states that the mind can think forever. Everything's a mind. The mind, there's no end to what the mind can come up with. I've talked about being an insomniac before and laying in bed and just like laying there. And I remember it struck me weird the first time I consciously recognized what I was doing, because all of a sudden I was thinking about midget wrestling. And I just thought that was, I don't know if that's like PC to say. I'm not trying to offend any of the midgets out there, or the little people out there, I should say. You know, the notion that I could get to such a strange thing, like I'd never thought about little people wrestling before. That was a very strange thing to be in my brain. And I was like probably like 13 or 14, and I'm like, what the hell happened here? And then I started to chase this long chain of thoughts, and eventually I could no longer remember where it was. And I couldn't believe how far I could actually get. Like I got really far, and I was like, wow, I'm like so far away from the little people wrestling that I was thinking of 2 seconds ago. You know, now I'm having a completely different experience seeing that length of what I can think about, and I realized in that moment that to a certain degree the mind was infinite. You know, the creativity was infinite. You could think about anything. And then when I came to understand that it was infinite beyond that, you know, you weren't disappearing after you died, the mind of the universe itself is infinite. And that means the mind can think of anything. And because everything that is in existence comes from mind in the first place, that means it comes from a place of infinite possible creation. And therefore, there can be infinite possible physical creation as well. We talked about the law of attraction. The only thing I'll say about the law of attraction is that I like to think of it as the law of creation. Because what you're seeing here is everything's one, so whatever your notions of God are, you are God. You know, you're not the God the way you thought of God, because the way most people think of God, it doesn't really exactly exist. It's just sort of an idea. It's just a, you know, something that can't even be conceived. A totality of all the things that could be conceived is essentially what God is. And you're a part of that. And even though you're not accessing the totality of all that can be perceived, if you really kind of think about it for a second, you'd realize there's no reason to. You don't want to access the totality of all that can be perceived. The whole idea is that we're getting to explore ourselves in one way or another by picking an avenue over here or an avenue over there, or let's check out that, and let's check out that. We're not being everything at once. There's no need for us to be everything at once. But at the same time, we come from and are one with that thing. And though we may be polarized and, you know, have all these possibilities of vibrations, we can use our understanding of our nature as this godly mind to line up with the things we want by simply understanding that we're creating them. We create all of them. We've created all of the things that we have in our life right now. We've created our children, and we've created our family. Our family created us, and we created them. It's a bit of a, you know, back and forth kind of thing, because we're all one, right? We're all one. So that means I created you, you created me. I created you so I could learn from you. You created me so I could learn from you. So I don't want to get in the way of what I might get from you. You don't want to get in the way of what you might get from me. So at the end of the day, we're just living in this unified creation where anything can come out of it. And the reason why we've got what we got is based on all the things that our minds believe are possible for us to achieve. But in reality, there's all sorts of things that we can do when we get our minds right. All right. So, the law of correspondence, which I was talking about as rhythmic relativity, right? Because coming off of rhythm, moving to correspondence, that's why I got the double lines on correspondence, you know, for the rhythm. It's like even more rhythms, all the possible rhythms. Every moment and everything corresponds to the past and future. As is above, so is below, and as is below, so is above. That last bit is like pretty close to what they say in the Kabbalion or the Hermetic circles or whatever. But every moment and everything correspond to the past and future. That's a bit more of the thing. The past and present, it's all preconceived. You know, like the details of it are ever sort of changing and shifting. But if you see here like a torus, as everything sort of like starts kind of close together in the middle and then it blasts out, whoa, and then it starts to come back around together again, right? It starts to reform, to recoalesce. Well, essentially, you can think of this as like the web of time. Everything that's ever going to happen, everything that ever has happened, it's all attached to this web that we can't see, that folds and moves in sacred geometric ways that we can't understand. And it doesn't have to line up, you know, it can move straight through this table. It doesn't have to line up with the physicality that we're living in here. It's just sort of the mental, energetic plane lining itself up constantly. The past, present, and future all sort of coming together to eventually be one again, or transform its energy into a new octave, which is probably more accurate. So yeah, I really want you to start thinking of correspondence as like this web, a kind of cool web, where like, you know, the spider knows when a fly hits its web. And you can be the spider. You can be the person who's sensitive to your web and knowing things. And there's all sorts of things that you can know because you're attached to the web. It's the whole universe. Information. You can just know information. You could just go places. You could move things. You can change the way reality operates because you are feeling the energy of the web and tapping into something more primordial than this physical ooze that we might see. There's all this stuff that you can see, but the truth of the matter is that the energy comes first, the ideas for all the things, they come first. So, let's see. New parameters in degrees. Music and color. So another way, there's a lot of, I'm basically going to talk about a lot of different ways that you can look at correspondence, and it's going to get a little bit like, woo, as I thin it out. But one of the ways that you can look at correspondence is new parameters, right? So we come up on a rhythm, and then there's this new set. It's, you know, in some instances, the examples you might make, it'll be a uniquely different octave. But say in music, you go up to the new octave, and now you're walking up that same journey. It's the same journey up, but it's a little different. And you know, even if you're dealing with something like in a situation, if it gets down to you walk into work and there's a dog who lunges at you and he barks at you, right? The next day, when you're walking to work, it's different. You're in a new octave because the previous experience of the day at work changed your thing. Even if nothing happens, let's say nothing happens, and there's no dog, there's nothing, right? Still, that either reinforces your previous positive feelings about how you're safe at work, starts to heal the damage done from the previous day when the dog attacked you, or is continuing an even sort of, sometimes getting to work is okay and sometimes getting to work isn't, right? There's always an effect. You get there, and each day you're learning from the previous day. It's affecting your rhythm and how you're having this experience, right? And each one of those you could consider a new correspondence, because you've come back around to the same place, but different. And it's always like that. You know, you're never going to find yourself back around at that same place and experiencing it the same way twice. It just doesn't happen. You could have an experience where you're like, I've had an experience much like this before, and I enjoyed that one, and I'm enjoying this one as well. You know, that's possible. But look at that. That's you recognizing nostalgically
that you like something about a thing before you're even experiencing it, something that you had already had the chance to get through, have some perspective on, and decide that was one of the best days ever, and now look, this is one of the best days ever. So it's different. It's always different. You're always different. And the universe is always different. The universe is just perpetually vibrating and perpetually changing its vibration, morphing it, trying to move it forward, trying to move it up, raise its vibration. New parameters, talked about music, talked about color. Oh, so color, I want to say, I kind of touched on this before, but we can only see Roy G. Biv, right? There could be another octave of colors above it and another color below it and more. Like, it's really incredible because the same way there are sounds we can't hear right now. You know that, I know that, we all know that. There are sounds we can't hear. There are sights we can't see. Things that are out of our visible range, things that are out of our audible range. So if that's possible, then it's absolutely possible for color as well, the things that we see. And all of those things would be corresponding color grids, that go up or down in one direction or another. More sort of proof of correspondence without actually having proof of the other colors, but it's a really cool thing to think about. I love the idea that one day maybe I'll know different colors than I've ever seen before. Okay, so I want to talk about rhythmic cycles. By transforming energy as it cycles through and breaks through to the corresponding higher or lower octave, right? So similar to what we were talking about before with, say, like the guy going to work, but maybe a better, richer example of that. I forget what this was, but it was sort of a thing of getting what you want, a little table to how you do that the right way, what the cycle looks like. And they said the cycle went something like receptivity gives you inspiration. So you're inspired, right? Your inspiration imagines, so now you're imagining. From your imagining, you take action. From your action, you begin to manifest. As you begin to manifest and get that ball rolling, you release the outcome of the thing that you're manifesting, and then you begin to receive. And now from this place of receptivity, you're open to inspiration. This is a beautiful cycle, which is really, it's very eloquently put together. That is exactly how you should be doing everything. And I want to say that again, just so you can really see it, because this is absolutely true, and this is following universal law. It starts with your receptiveness, your openness to the possibility, not your closedness to your job possibilities or your finances or your health. Everything that you have that you could say against your health, against your own mind, against your well-being. Well, the doctor told me this, or well, they said this. Well, I am this. Well, I'm a leukemia patient. Like, it's just not worth it. Don't say those things. Don't go down that path. That's closing doors for yourself. You don't want to close any of these doors. You can kind of know a little thing, but the more that you're open to the miraculous, the more you allow the infinite possibilities of the universe to actually allow themselves in your life, because the universe is just really capable of so much, and there's intelligence behind the scenes. So things are trying to line up with each other all the time, and we sort of cleverly go, oh, well, 2 + 2 is 4, and that's very obvious, 2 + 2 is 4, come on, I don't want to get the wrong answer. But little did we know that our 4 was going to get turned into an 8 because some other paper with chalk on the back of it was going to scrape across our paper, and it was going to put a little line there, and it looked like an 8, and now we got it wrong, and we should have written it the way our angels told us to, or our intuition told us to at the time, because that wrong answer would have been the right answer, because the line that was going to be on the thing would have made it look like a 4 if you had done it that way, or whatever it might be. There are aspects at play that would boggle your mind. I did the stupidest thing, and something worked out great. Some door opened up that I couldn't imagine because I just wasn't closing it anymore. And that's something that's happened for me many, many, many times. So please, be open to that yourself. You want to be receptive. After you're receptive, you'll see, you imagine. When you're receptive, that's when the inspiration, the inspired action, the action comes after you're inspired, but being receptive is how you get to a place where you can get those ideas. And then when you get those ideas, that's when you take action. You take that action. And then when you take that action, you let the action that you've taken manifest. You don't muscle the action. You take the appropriate action, no more, no less. You take the action necessary for the thing that you said. Not the whole thing, not to get the thing all done, but the inspiration of, I should call Jimmy. Jimmy should have the conversation I want to have. And then when you have that conversation with Jimmy, and he tells you, oh yeah, man, I always thought you should do blah, 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 blah. And that reminds you that you had a great idea that was just like Jimmy's, and he's right, and I should do that. And now you go and you take that action. And this is how you let the things manifest. And as you get into this situation, you release, and when you manifest, you release, and then you receive. You receive new inspiration, right? Because you were receptive from Jimmy. Now Jimmy's like, here's the new idea. Now you're like, okay, what's the action on this idea? Now I'm going to manifest the thing that I want from that. I'm going to receive this now after I manifest it. Here we go. Now I receive the gift of being able to move this thing forward. It's all that over and over again. It's not a long process of trying to get the thing that you want. It's a short and perpetual process of being open, receiving your inspiration, taking action on your inspiration, letting go what might be of that thing, receiving, being open to receive the proper feedback from Jimmy. Let's say if you're defensive, this doesn't work anymore. Now Jimmy told you that you should open this business, and instead of realizing that you had a similar idea and you were thinking about doing that yourself, you were like, well, I know you think I'm a failure, Jimmy, but damn it, that's not going to help your situation. And that throws you off this beautiful wheel of giving and receiving. And the universe is breathing. Everything's vibrating. Everything's pulsing back and forth, and that give and receive of the universe is very, very natural. Myself in general, when I would get inspired, my whole life, this is something I'm really working on now. It's a very difficult thing. It would be like, I get the inspiration, and then I'm like, action, 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 action. I don't open myself up to receive. I'm like, the original inspiration is the only inspiration I need. I never need another inspiration again. I'm taking this inspiration to the promised land. And, and I think that was something that I learned from my mother and my father. They operated like that, and that can be very good. Lots of people actually succeed very well with that myopic focus. They end up invariably going through these steps anyway. They go through these steps anyway. It's just not so easy. They get forced through these steps and eventually come to a place where they're just like giving up, and then all of a sudden they receive things because they gave up, So a lot of times this circle can be really difficult, and you don't want it to be very difficult for yourself. You want to let this process, this natural process of opening yourself up to inspiration, opening yourself up to what that inspiration might lead to, then being ready to receive that again. You always need to get back to receptivity. So now I got to receive it. Inspiration, I'm going to make the action to do the thing, and now I got to get open again, because if I'm not open again, I'm not going to be able to receive this thing that I manifest. All right. So we're going to continue. Are you the same? Are you the same? I wanted to talk about, well, I did in a brief moment. So I'm like, I tend to be so charged up with these things in my head, I'll like kind of touch on them a little bit as I'm speaking. But essentially, if you think about a chord, when we're ringing out a chord, bing, you're thinking about that spider web analogy again, right? Within that chord, if the chord's flat, it means that it's only resonating the lower octaves beneath it, right? If a chord is sharp, it's only resonating the higher octaves above it. But if a chord's nice and in balance, it's in the middle. In the middle, it's ringing out what? Both. It's ringing out both the low and the high. And ultimately, the sound is getting so quiet or so low frequency that you and I can't hear it at a certain point. But the largest sound is the center sound. But ringing out from the side of that and the side of that is a quiet crescendo of all of the other sounds, right? And they go lower and lower and higher, eventually too high for you to hear them, eventually too low for you to hear them. But essentially, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about correspondence in that web. You know, when the thing rings out, it's ringing every note. It's affecting it. You know, it goes into every frequency, and every frequency feels that vibration. Okay. 5 hearing, of course. 6. Correspondence suggests the universe echoes out indefinitely. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. 7, conversational analogies exist in work because of this. Okay, this is really interesting. I didn't, I mean, like, this is something like I understand and understood, but I didn't really understand it or understand that I understood it until I heard somebody say it today. As I always listen to a couple things, listen to some people talk about, you know, some of these subjects and see what's being said and, you know, what I think I can offer as far as clarity. When it came to correspondence, honestly, I was like 6 videos in, and I couldn't get anybody who was actually talking about correspondence, because correspondence is a little wibbly wobbly, like in terms of like it can kind of, and you can really get lost in the word correspondence and sort of the depth of its meaning. This was a little of a hard one for some people to get their heads around, but essentially, and I don't know if they said this exactly like I'm going to say this, but this was what it inspired in me as I heard it, that essentially correspondence is why people can speak in analogies. Everything is corresponding with each other in so many different ways. And you can say that the feather is like this, and you can say that the guy is like that, and, you know, simile and metaphor, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's ultimately coming from our ability to compare things so easily. We can compare them so easily because everything is corresponding with one another. Everything is in this ringing web of stuff. You know, the animals and the rocks and the earth and the people, we're all formed from the same stuff. There's only so much stuff that you take. We're all, you know, vibrating with the same energies and using the same basic rhythms and all of this stuff. We may put words and stuff on top of it, numbers or whatever. A number still is a thing to an animal, you know, but it's a simpler sort of idea. We can dress everything up and intellectualize everything and make us seem so different from these other things. But we're exactly like these other things. And we have to follow the same rules that all the other things follow. But yeah, I just love that essentially conversational analogies would not be possible without correspondence. Let's see what I got over here. This is also something that essentially proves everyone is correct, that all positions are correct, because all of our different, say, political positions or religious positions, they intertwine. Every energy that needs to exist for balance does exist. So if you see a person who, you know, like when I was a kid, I was sensitive because I was an atheist, so I was sensitive to religious people. But I didn't know at the time that, let's say, for every crazy religious person that I came across, or every super nasty, you're going to hell kind of Catholic that I met, there are buckets of the other ones, of the ones who not only are not that, are the antithesis of that, and if they were in the same room with these ones, would bring balance to those ones and would have conversations that they would bring balance to each other. And I don't have to stand in opposition to that person. I don't have to stand in opposition to all the things that seemingly need somebody to stand in opposition for. You know, they have energetic opposition in play naturally already. It's just inherent in nature. So you don't have to get bogged down in like, well, is that being taken care of or that being taken care of? Because there is checks and balances within the universe. Things are always rising to compensate and correspond for and to the things, you know, and whether or not that, you know, like everything's lining up, everything's, not to say it's like pre-planned, it just couldn't be any other way to some degree because we're just building from this flow. This very natural flow is what built everything in the first place. So a natural flow is what we continue to have. All right, moving on. So I talked about this earlier about, like, you know, the person going to work, and no matter what happens at work, he's going to have learned from the last, whether it's reinforcing patterns that exist for him or changing patterns and softening them or making them worse, that the thing's going to be changing. I just watched a documentary on the game of Go the other day. I think it's Go. Right? Is that pronounced Go? Michael was watching a little bit with me. Yeah. Such a great game. I've never played it before. I didn't really know anything about it. Very, very popular game, and such a simple, wonderful game to learn about when you're thinking about these concepts of universal law, because it's just so simple. And it's a game that really, you know, somebody who understands this could kick some ass at Go. It's just all that. Because essentially you're just looking at this board, a big kind of checkerboard, but not black and white spaces, just squares. And you're going to fill these spaces with either white little circles or black little circles. And the people go back and forth trying to surround each other's men, trying to like figure out how to get behind each other so that they can wrap each other up in their men and get the most points. Because every time you wrap up the guys, you pull people off the board. And then, so there's a really complex scoring. It's a very complicated game because there's a big board and there's all these possibilities, which is just such a great metaphor for vibration. You know, essentially, you're looking at the board can be set up in all different configurations. I mean, just infinite configurations. I forgot what the number was when I was watching the documentary of like how many configurations of the board there actually were, but it was insane. You were like, whoa, you can actually do that many. The game's so simple. It's just moving around white and black dots, but this is how a computer's made. Ones and zeros, right? Ones and zeros. These little black and white dots on a board, okay? So depending on where you would put these dots on a board, and I'll just kind of do a little thing here. I'll turn this into a corner of a Go board. Now, correspondence is so interesting here in a lot of ways. It's a very simple way to look at it, right? Because depending on where the first person goes, depends on where you go, right? And I mean, maybe, you know what, I'll divide it up just a little bit smaller real quick, so I can give you a better idea about really what I'm saying here. So my first move, I can put my Go piece anywhere. And there's a dot here already, so let's say I'm the black guy and I put it right here, right? So now, based on this move, is there an infinite amount of moves that the other person's going to make? Or are there kind of less moves now that the person's going to make? Because they're basing their decision on the overall arcing thing of this game, and they're going to move somewhere that corresponds with where they went. Because it's not a blank board anymore. It's a board with one dot on it, and the dot's right there. And this mother effer on the other side better consider where this person put his dot, or he's leaving himself open. And on some level, even if, let's say, he ignores the first few moves and does his own thing that he planned to do, eventually he's going to start not ignoring what the other person's doing as they're adding more dots. And he's got a dot down here, and he's got a dot down here. And now the circular guy, you know, he's like making his circle over here and over here and over here because he's ignoring it, let's say. You know, this is calamity for him. So eventually he's going to have to start viewing this guy's movement as like, that's the shark in the water, and I got to make sure that I'm making moves that correspond to his moves so that I can compensate. I can compensate the energy here. And really that's what correspondence can be thought of in a lot of different ways, as compensation for all the other energy in the universe. It's, basically you'd say that there's a law that compensates for everything. Everything is just sort of compensating for each other, for itself, for every thought, for every energy, for everything that's going on. There's a compensating thing there for it. Probably many layers of compensating things there for it on various different fields of imagining, actually, because it just perpetually goes up, which is the thing we're going to talk about next week, which is why I haven't gotten there in my mind today, of the infinite compensation. The correspondence is just going to keep going, It's like, that's rhythm, and the rhythm's along, and then the compensation's even bigger with all these things, and then goes on for forever. Goes on for forever. Doom. Let's see. So that's Go. Thank you, Go. Number 10, in a giant spider web, one area can be felt by the whole because it's one big harmonic interconnected system. That's what we talked about earlier, which is what we're describing here, is the mechanism that is God, essentially. Yeah, the mechanism that is God, essentially, is like this big spider web, this big harmonic conversion of slight, invisible tentacles that are touching everything, because we're all one, and is affected by and compensating for everything that's going on. It's not like God is this guy and he's like coming at you. There are beings that to us would seem like gods, I'm sure, but God, the real God is just this web of totality of everything, of all the thoughts, of all the energy, and it's just perpetually trying to balance itself, and that includes you and me and the world and the planet and the solar system and just everything. Always going to a state of more perfect than it was yesterday. So let's see, is anything happening really, or is it all just so? Perfect, right? And it's really interesting to think about. Is anything actually happening? Or is everything just sort of like we could just kind of pause it, and it's just like, because everything that's happening now is happening perpetually, there's no time, so what's the point? The point is to ride the ride, to get on the elevator and to have a good time, to enjoy and experience yourself, to experience the universe, to experience God. And that is this unraveling of this thing that is really just bing, harmonic frequency that's touching all sorts of other wires and tapestry. Like, I keep seeing in my head this beautiful layout. The ladies, the old ladies who share one eye in Greek mythology, they call them the Furies. They're like the soothsayers. These women, they could cut your cord for your life, and it was like a hair. They had a hair, and they went to go cut Hercules. It's in the animated Disney movie. And they couldn't cut Hercules in the end. But that thread of life, right? That is a metaphor. Let's say if we thought of your life as a thread, as like a guitar chord, and that on some level that chord is entwined and touching all of the other chords. And probably simpler than that, we could just think of everybody as being one unified guitar chord touched together. And everything that bang touches one of us, touches all of us. It just spreads down the line in either direction. Unless it's a flat note or a sharp note. But hopefully you'll go along with my metaphor there. Okay. All right, we're getting towards the back end of our thing, and how are we doing with my, yeah, look at that. All right, time frame here. Okay, tried to make class a little bit less long today. I've been trying that actually for the past bunch of weeks. Literally every week I go in with my mind of like, I'm gonna shave 15 minutes off the class today and I'll be really happy. Or actually I've been trying to shave like a half an hour off the class. And maybe that's why that I was just shaving not enough. I like talking about this stuff. All right. Correspondence is ultimately what allows us to learn by reusing the corresponding patterns we see to grow over and over, right? Let's say you learn guitar. Now you kind of know bass, right? Go pick up a bass. Learn guitar and bass. Might be able to pick up a harp, try to figure it out. I don't know, maybe. starting to feel frosty, feeling like maybe you know some stuff. That's how it goes. There's corresponding intelligence. You do a little math, you feel good about that. You get a little subtraction going. Okay, now we're going to do multiplication. All right, feeling good about that. Some division. All right, now we're going to be putting letters and numbers and parentheses around it. You don't even know what you're looking at. All right, cool. You know, but if you're feeling good about the other ones, all of a sudden it's not too bad. You show up with some calculus for, you know, bring that to my son Grayson right now, and he would just be like, you know, like when kids lose breath. Oh my God, this is gonna kill me. This is destroy me, Dad. That's the thing. And similarly with like corresponding, I talked about this in one of the earlier classes. I loved Skid Row's first album, Sebastian Bach. Oh my God, what a great vocalist he is. He was a family friend, a friend of my family's. And so I was exposed to him when I was young. And he's so talented. And I loved the first Skid Row album that I heard. And it has a song on it called 18 in Life on it, which is so great. Another song called Youth Gone Wild, which is awesome. And a song called I Remember You. Ugh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful song. And Youth Gone Wild's heavy and badass and cool. And then I Remember You was like this incredible ballad. And then 18 in Life is this really just deep and meaningful, you know, center rocker kind of song, story song. It's really great record. Like for me, it's like perfect. And I liked other stuff on their record. And then when I listened to their follow-up record, which was called Slave to the Grind, and you know you're dealing with a different record when you just look at the album cover. The album cover of Skid Row, it's like black and white. It says Skid Row in red. And then the album cover for Slave to the Grind is like a painting of some man in like a furnace whipping someone, and there are people and they're crying. I'm like, ah! Like they were obviously trying to change their image in some fashion or whatever. And I looked at this album cover and I was just like, ooh, I don't know about this. And I put on this album, and the first track, Monkey Business, is like really like, just kind of, I don't know, like in your face and screechy and like, it's like, I loved the first album and I just could not make heads or tails of this record. But now, after trying to get through the whole thing, and I just really did not like it at the time, I went and I ended up getting into some different music. And I went on this rhythmic journey. You know, I went on a journey of changing my polarization towards how I felt about those sort of styles. And when I got into Marilyn Manson, who was and I got into Manson very early, I have to say that as a true fan, with Dope Hat and stuff, with the Portrait of American Family, when he was a bit of a punk band. But he was pretty raunchy in his approach to things. And it changed my perspective. And there was a couple other bands that I listened to at that time. I think there was a hardcore band that I liked called Propane that was very heavy. Very heavy, but they are the one really heavy band that I love. I tend not to really like super heavy bands, but I got into a few bands that were very heavy and was very into them. And then somehow or another, I come back around to Skid Row's Slave to the Grind album. And wouldn't you know it, man, I'm in the corresponding octave, and I love it. I'm like, monkey business, hell yeah. Slave to the grind, slave to the grind. Like, I love it. I got into it. It was like, it became a favorite album for me. And I hated it. And it was like 6 months had passed, which was really funny. I remember that as a kid, being like, wasn't it just like 6 months ago? You were just like so disappointed. You know, because I was so appointed. I was so ready to enjoy that album because I loved the previous album and I loved Sebastian. And I was like, ugh. And then 6 months later, things change. All of a sudden, a corresponding vibration comes along, and that's it. It's all over. Let's see, learning guitar, bass. As you learn the basic patterns, learn to recognize where they repeat. Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing of correspondence. It's like correspondence is the patterns repeat. Recognize the basic patterns, see that the basic patterns repeat, and the patterns are going to repeat over and over again, and they're always kind of shifting up or shifting down depending on the direction of the rhythm, which way the rhythm's going. The rhythm's going that way, this way, you know, and then where's the corresponding thing? We know that if we've been going whoop, well, eventually that's going to come down, you know, the energy's, you know, going to kind of go away or whatever. So we don't want to like expend all, like if we're going whoop, and we're about to come back and we need to hold our breath, we certainly don't want to go.
You're gonna get pulled back, and you got nothing, man. I told you you're about to go underwater. You were going up and up and up and up, and then you were just like, nah, man, it's cool. And now you're drowning as you're getting dragged through the back pull of this swing, the corresponding swing, I might add, corresponding to that rhythm. Okay. All right, we're getting towards the end here. So, the real simple thing here as we talk about as above, so below, because that's the big thing that they like to say. And to focus there and illuminate there, I think, is probably the most helpful. As above, so below. When we're getting through the cycle of life and death, we're dealing with a situation of correspondence once again. The things that bring forth the cycle of renewal that we talked about earlier with your inspiration and imagining and then action and then manifest and release and receive. This is going on in life and death. These are the things that bring forth new life in, take the life out, and bring life forth again. And life and death, or a certain point on the other side of death, maybe you would call, there's a corresponding point as it's looping around again. And what are we doing? We've gotten to a point where we have just learned from our previous life, and we are not the same as we were the last time we died, and we're in the same energy deciding to go forth into the physical. We're in a new place because we just experienced freshly that experience of being Jesse or being Michael or being whoever you want to be in your life. You have learned, you have grown, you have changed. You are not the same person who was figuring out to go into Jesse's life in the previous life. That was based on when I was King Arthur, and all the things I learned from being Arthur, King of the Britons. Whatever you learned in those past lives, now you plan the Jesse life based on those things, based on the people that you met, people you wanted to see again, things that you wanted to experience, things you wanted to atone for, everything that you wanted to set up, you preconceived and then went in. And then that life changes you and affects you, and now you go into the next one ready to be changed and affected by the other one. But of course, this is all once and has always been, so it's just this of this perpetual thing. So life and death are just like that. And then even if you want to just, let's say not take the spiritual part of death out of it, what's going on with the body when somebody dies? It's a corresponding new version of the body. It's still vibrating. The cells within it, they're dying, but they're still there. There's just no operating system going on, and there's some new correspondence taking place as this body goes from being this one thing into another thing. Then the thing's going to start to decompose, and there's going to be some correspondence as all these things break down to the original components that were put into it in the first place that made it into the body that it was, right? Okay. So, we're going to be wrapping up at like an hour maybe if I continue on the way. Oh, no, actually, I have a little bit to talk about there. Okay. So, yes. And if you have any questions, ask them now, and I'll get to them because I guess I'm like getting towards the end. Okay, so I want to talk about health because I have a friend of mine, Tina, who was dealing with some health problems, and she's about to have like a surgery, and they're going to remove her gallbladder. And I was like, all right, I just want to like tell you this, I'm not trying to like force it on you kind of thing. And she was really happy to get the information, but what she didn't have much of an understanding about, most people don't, and we have talked about this in other fashions, in other classes, but thought it was good to maybe just talk about it in its wholeness, that there is a corresponding energetic problem that goes along with any physical problem. So if you have cancer, any sort of disease, you got the flu, you got the sniffles, whatever it is, there's a corresponding energetic thing. But additionally, you break your leg, you hurt your finger, you cut yourself, there is corresponding energy that goes with that too. Because again, there's no time. The universe knows what's what. The energy is more important than the physical.
The real problem with our medical system, the way it's situated right now, is that we think the most important part of the game is the physical. And it seems to be. So often, sewing somebody up so they don't die is a very important thing. But if we really want to start taking a long-term approach to healing our bodies, we have to heal the energy associated with the problems that we're having. Because it doesn't matter how many times they remove the cancer will keep coming back if energetically you have an anger inside you that is growing it. It doesn't matter what they remove from your body if that area of the body is trying to tell you that there is an energetic problem, it will continue to manifest in new and interesting ways. And you're going to be like, what the hell's going on now? I thought it'd be fine. I removed the thing, but now something right next to it's messed up. Well, that's the thing. You've got an energetic problem. I woke up with chronic body pain at 30, and very quickly I realized that my problem was energetic. It was things that I wasn't facing about myself and ways that I felt. And I saw before me a path of like expensive doctors and all sorts of things. And I was just like, that's not going to do anything. I'm going to waste my family's money. And then I'm just going to be right back to where I was. I have to heal my soul. I have to heal my energy. My energy's the most important thing. The energy dictates the shape of my body. And that's true. You grow into your energy field as a fetus. There's a great book called The Field that I recommend anybody read that really enlivens that subject of, sort of the chicken that grows into its energetic field, person growing into their energetic field. So the field is so important, and we don't acknowledge it here in the West. In the East, it's acknowledged and taken care of a lot more. Things like acupuncture and even chiropractic, a little bit of osteopathy, and other things like that. They consider the auric field a little bit, but really, no one on this planet is really considering the auric field, the energy behind the thing, as much as they should. Because at the end of the day, most of them will tell you, yeah, but of course, sometimes you cut your finger. No. You don't. You cut your finger if the energy exists for that to happen. If the energy doesn't exist for that to happen, it just doesn't happen. And I'll argue with anybody who says otherwise. It's just the truth of reality. Things just kind of can't occur unless they're in this real place of fluctuation. And there are points of fluctuation. There are points of free will. We get to make choice all the time. So there are moments where there's some wiggle to what might happen. But ultimately, these rules are just always applying over and over and over again. And it's what's dictating our reality. So when it comes to your health, it behooves you to try and get to the bottom. And you can really go a long way just Googling what is the spiritual meaning of gallbladder, problems. And that was immediately what I did for my friend. I just looked that up and I said, hey, take a look at this. And I'm like, I don't want to elaborate on it too much, but think about this and see if any of this that it says rings true for you. Because everything has an energetic association. That's the most important thing. I don't want you to go into surgery and then have to go back and do this again sometime, And that's the thing that I want for all of you guys as well. I don't want you to have some problem happen, feel like you went on this harrowing journey to heal yourself and fix yourself, and realize that you didn't fix anything because you didn't actually look at what that problem energetically was designed to tell you. And it's really amazing how, because of all this correspondence and all these simple patterns, how your energetic problems will really kind of line up in strange metaphoric things for you. Like, oh, my stomach hurts? Maybe it's because I'm always worrying and churning over different things. You're like, oh, my heart hurts? Maybe it's because I'm like freaked out that I'm going against who I am and I'm not being true to myself. It makes sense. And that's a lot of spiritual stuff, like kind of hurts. It hurts how much it makes sense sometimes and how much it'll smack you in the face. It's like, oh, that's it. But it really behooves you to get to the bottom of the energetic problem behind everything. And there is for everything, for teeth, for anything. It's not a matter of just, oh, things happen. No, everything's cause and effect. Everything's this energy going back and forth. Your thing with your teeth, your thing with your heart, your thing with your, whatever it is, you can get to the bottom of where your imbalance is, and you can help heal yourself for good. I don't know about necessarily growing back limbs, but I'm sure on some level that probably is perfectly, absolutely possible. But we do live in a world where something like that, it seems impossible. And we're living in a collective consciousness where we're living under a lot of agreements that we've made together. So certain things aren't being allowed for right now. But I believe on this planet we're going to see miraculous things happen in the future. As people begin to open their minds to what is possible, we'll start to be able to accomplish more with the power of our minds. All right, cool. To wrap this up, and then I'll take any questions that we've got. I want to say everything can be looked at positively. Like music, you can sing low or high, both corresponding, higher and higher, right? So in the music, in the octaves, you can go low and you can go higher and you can higher and higher and higher and higher. All these things exist. And what was the thing that I told you about, when we go in a big circle? Let's see, I have a thing over here. If we go back and forth, right, we're getting to this neutral place. But we have a harmonic frequency within the range. So let's say the middle of it, of what we can hear is here, and this is the higher stuff and the higher stuff. They're all corresponding, stacked on top of each other. And we can go to, let's say, the least positive thing would be like being physically harmed in terrible ways, torn asunder, whatever. And like the best positive thing would be like being made love to passionately, being taken care of in every way. But then we could say that, oh no, but the making love to became too painful or became too strong and eventually ripped you apart. It's bad again. We flop over to bad again. We're on this perpetual loop of a thing, which means we can always find our way in either direction back to good or back to bad again. We can take the extreme all the way over to the other one, always, at all times. So it's always in your power to choose positivity, to choose to think of things positive. Okay? That is really the biggest thing with the universal law. The universal law is proof that thinking positively is the way, is the answer. It's our notions of, oh no, snakes, not good, dogs, okay, cats, okay, rats, that's the problem. It's our openness and virtue towards everything, and humbleness and our oneness and reason towards everything, and our balance towards everything, that makes it all go round and lets it all go round with ease. So whenever things are coming into your life that may seem outwardly not positive, always choose to find your way to the positive thing. And I don't mean to necessarily go, well, at least I'm alive. I know that's such a tough thing. And maybe if that is your last thing you can think of, say that to yourself. Try. But I find you can always find a lot more than that. Well, at least I have the job that I do have. Well, at least I have the money that I do have. And at least I was able to have that great meal with my friends. And at least I have the friends that I do have. And at least I have what I do have. That is the place you always want to be coming through, trying to see. And at least I have had it so good that I can recognize when it's less good. Because I wouldn't be able to recognize that it's less good now had I never had it so good in the past. I'm so glad that I've had it so good in the past that I can recognize that now. And that's really the biggest thing, the biggest lesson I think that you can always find, no matter what the circumstance is, that when you're feeling down, it's because you have felt up. You only feel down because you know what up feels like. Remember that. Remember, you're only feeling this because you know that better things exist. And that means that they can exist again. And it makes me cry thinking that, because it's such a powerful and freeing thing.
if you really can feel that, like I feel that, it's so, anything's possible, always, at any moment. So just always have that in mind, and always have in mind that the lows allow you to understand and appreciate the great highs. All right, that is my class for today, unless I have some questions.
No, people are not asking questions. Just you have Brittany commenting. Sometimes I get confused, but I am intrigued by the more that people don't really realize as far as the universe. The question my own existence has pondered in my past to review how I came to today.
Sometimes it's hard to figure out. And you know what? Figuring that stuff out isn't important. It's not important to know exactly how you got there. You'll get the inspiration, you'll get the nudges, the remembrance for the things that you need to know. You know, if you need to know something, it will be there. So to sit there and like scratch the recesses of your brain to try to get out of you what you think you need, it tends to be a lot of folly. You know, just let it come. Just becoming conscious that you wanna, you want to understand yourself. You want to understand the cause and effect that led you to where you are, and you want to get a hold of that powerful rhythm and begin to ride it, and use it for your benefit, and know when you're on the upswing, and know that it works like that, and take advantage of that upswing, and also be ready for that downswing, and not be so shocked by it and like, ooh, when that does happen, because it's going to. That's really the most important thing. Anyway, it was great hanging with you guys today. I'm so glad I was able to actually do a concise class and not and I'm gonna not do it right now. Overstay my welcome. End, over, go, bye.